Thank you. So just for the final section of this webinar, we don't have time to go into every one of those strategies, everything that we've looked at. Like a lot of those terms that we were talking about, particularly on the slide with the diagram, when we were talking about making links, predicting, questioning, clarifying, inferring, summarising. Those, that basically sums up what's contained within all of the sort of reading comprehension packs or strategies that are out there. That's essentially what we're doing, and they're all, prominent within the benchmarks. We don't have time to go through every single one of them tonight and exemplify, but we always want people to have a takeaway from the sessions that we've got, and so we've just picked 3 to exemplify what we've got for them. And I think, Laura, am I right in saying that we've got a Padlet that's got some additional resources and materials on it that we'll share later? Yeah. Okay. So we're going to look at one from before reading, one from during reading, and one from after. And we're going to start off with prediction. Each one of these at the top of the slide, you can see that they've all been mapped to the E's and O's. We've pitched it around about 2nd and 3rd level, but you can easily walk that back and you can easily take it up to 4th if that's something that you want to do. But we wanted to begin with prediction, and the idea of making predictions and encouraging readers to be active in the process of reading, thinking ahead, asking questions, and trying to figure out what that text is going to be about before they start to read it, and bring those experiences to the text that they read.
Thanks, David. I'd just like to share a few ideas in terms of developing the strategy of prediction in the classroom. So on the left-hand side, we've got a few activity ideas. The first one is a personal favourite of mine. And what you do is ask pupils to predict 10 words, phrases, images, pieces of vocabulary that they predict will appear in a piece of text. So at early level, it could be, for example, with this text you see here, pupils predicting 10 animals or probably animals most likely that they would see in this book, Forest Life. However, maybe at 3rd level, this could be pupils predicting some subject-specific language that might appear within, for example, a scientific explanation or a historic account. And pupils really love to tick off the words or the phrases as they appear in the text and count up how many they manage to correctly predict. It becomes a wee bit of a game, and they really enjoy that challenge. Another simple activity is place a post-it, which is, again, just as it sounds, the idea is that you place post-its at different points within a class novel or a picture book, asking pupils to stop and confirm or reject their previous predictions before going on to make new ones. And the last idea there is the 10-second prediction preview, which again is quite useful at 2nd and 3rd level, where pupils are maybe engaging with a whole text for the first time. So the text is flashed up on the board for, say, 10 to 15 seconds, and pupils need to make predictions based upon the title, the length of the text, the vocabulary, the style of writing, the layout, any diagrams or images that are used. And again, it's just, as David said, asking pupils to think about what they already know and ask questions about what's coming ahead. And on the right-hand side of the slide, we have some scaffolds, sort of sentence scaffolds, to support pupils as they're thinking aloud, or you're thinking aloud during the modelling and the guided instruction section. And just one final note to make a point, just to be cautious here, that it's important to emphasise that we're not learning to predict for the sake of just being able to predict. Ultimately, the aim is to be able to develop understanding of a text. So we're using the strategy of prediction to develop understanding. And again, these strategies are meant to be very simple. They don't require a huge amount of preparation because it's all about engaging pupils and thinking about the text and discussing them. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think just before we move on to the next slide, Laura, I think I would just say that, although we've kind of sort of positioned these within 2nd and 3rd level, I think those activities are absolutely portable to elsewhere, and I think they're really useful no matter what stage we're talking about. I mean, I think one of the, being able, I think someone may have mentioned it in the chat, Mrs. Bates, about developing vocabulary, but that's absolutely right. That idea to be, to be as succinct as that, to use those 10 words, or that, or to limit it to 10 seconds, I think is really powerful. So I think, these suggestions here can be used right across the board. Could we have the next strategy, please, Julie? So within, as children are reading, and I think we wanted to focus on inference because I think traditionally it's been one that people have found that a little bit more difficult. I think it's one that, it's not quite as comfortable because there quite often isn't a real a right answer. And it's quite often the case that, need to be open. I think this is the absolute strategy where funds of knowledge comes in, because, you've got to value what we're drawing those inferences based on the experiences that we have. I think there are very rarely any wrong answers here, but I think it's about engaging with that process. I think it's about being able to, attempt to read between the lines and to figure out what the author is really trying to say. It is about those gaps that the author's left, but those gaps have been left for a reason, and it's about you bringing what you know to that text and being able to read between the lines. Laura?
Yeah, sure. So again, just a few ideas to sort of be able to pick up and use in the context of any text. The first is the inference equation, which is really a sort of discussion point. So pupils need to think about the clues in the text. They need to add on what they already know, their prior knowledge, and then from there they can infer. So again, this is just a really useful way of modelling and introducing the concept of inference to a whole class. And we wouldn't expect pupils to use the equation in a mathematical sense, but really just to show that by using the clues from the text and what you already know, you can infer. Another few wee ideas would be to collect some facts, some actions and quotes from a chapter that you've read around a character, and ask pupils maybe, on post-its to record some of those facts, some of the actions from the character and some direct quotes before going on to infer. And lastly, again, images can be really, really powerful in terms of an accessible and helpful way of allowing pupils to consider what might be going on around the picture. So what can we not actually see, but what's not explicitly shown in the picture, but how reading between the lines, if that's possible with a picture, which I definitely think it is.
Yeah, and I think as well, when we're thinking about what this might look like for learners, it does come back to that idea of being an active reader. It comes back to examining a text, looking for techniques that maybe stand out, looking for things that might have a different meaning or a hidden meaning or something else that we could draw from what the text is telling us. But I think, equally importantly, or even more importantly, this is another opportunity to engage in discussion. It's another opportunity for modelling and being able to give those, I talked about no wrong answers, but that's about being able to give reasons for your understanding of a text. Can we move on, please, Julie? Elaine, I'm just wondering if I said that before you typed it. And finally, paraphrasing and summarising. Yeah, and again, we mentioned earlier on just about the fact that, it's very, very difficult to separate these. Learners identify and accumulate what the most important ideas are. They then put them into their own words. And sometimes summarising can be considered quite difficult to teach too. But I think it is, we mentioned it earlier on, it is that ability, that idea of being able, exposure to text, being able to put things into your own words, demonstrating true understanding. So, Laura, I'll pass over to you.
Yeah, again, just a few suggestions to use in the class. And again, while I'm speaking, please feel free to throw in any of your own teaching activities, ideas around supporting prediction, inference and summarising, or any other strategy you like, because the knowledge is in the room and I'm sure you have far more ideas than we have the capacity to share in this presentation today. Just a few ideas here, I suppose, moving through sort of sophistication, starting with retelling and moving to summarising. So a great way to support pupils as they develop their retelling skills is to use the 5-finger retell prompt, which supports pupils as they retell a story in chronological order. So pupils identify the main characters, the setting, the main problem, the problem in the story, the events as a result of that problem, and the solution. And again, that sounds quite complicated, but once pupils get used to that structure, it's a really powerful way to not only retell a story, but also to then go on and structure their own story writing as well. Further on from there, maybe at sort of second level, we might ask pupils to find keywords and then use those keywords to write their own summary sentence. And I think Gail, you had mentioned that in an earlier comment. Before jumping straight into summarising, finding those keywords can be the sort of step in between. I suppose it's kind of finding the main idea or identifying key bits of keywords within that. And then 2 last little ideas there. My favourite is the 25-word challenge, and that's when we ask pupils to consider who, what, where, when, why and how. And pupils have to summarise, for example, a chapter or a film short that they've read or listened or watched, and they have to try and summarise it in 25 words. Quite often they'll start with 50 words and think, this is impossible, I can't get it down to 25, but that's part of the process, is thinking about how can I whittle this down and how can I, what can I take out, what's not important, what can I miss out or what do I not need to mention. And again, just a final prompt there for supporting summarising of a more lengthy text or maybe even a film would be the someone wanted but so and then. And again, these are just a few ideas. There's so many more out there, and I see some ideas coming through the chat just now.
I think we had also sort of picked up there, Laura, the important part here, just as important as what you would leave out. Quite crucial to that process, because that's the skill. It's deciding what to include and what not to include. And we debated over whether we would leave that section in there, the bit about what you wouldn't mention. But actually, I think that's key. Being able to differentiate between something that's really crucial to someone else's understanding of the story that you're retelling, or something that's absolutely got to go in there.